On today's episode, we have Terrena Huisman, who grew up in Alberta and came to the East Coast for university. Terrena has always had the mind to spot opportunities and address them through entrepreneurship, a skill she acquired at a young age that led her to appearing on Dragon's Den at only 22 years old. Now 24, she finds herself in Barrie, Ontario, and is in the transition of leaving one job and starting a new career. Find out more about Terena's story now.
I was the same old me with the same old blues. I was the same old me with the same old blues. I was the same old me.
And we are back for another episode of Brand New View. It's our 5th episode. Today we're joined by Terrena Huisman. We're very excited for Terrena to join us today. How you doing, Terrena?
Hey guys, I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm great, thanks.
Awesome. Very good. Just came off a nice tie with the Pee-wees, so we're riding high.
That's
Lovely.
Pee-wee hockey.
Awesome.
Yeah. So, Terrena, where are you joining us from tonight?
I am currently sitting on my mildly comfortable couch calling from Barrie, Ontario, about an hour north of Toronto.
Okay, right
There we
on.
go. Go Colts.
Yes.
First time buyer, long time listener.
I am
Terrena
surprised
Huisman.
you know that. 10 minutes away.
Ben pretty much knows every fact there is about junior hockey. It's kind of crazy. So, Terrena, you're not originally from Ontario. Where'd you grow up?
Yeah, I'm not from Ontario. I'm actually from, I was born in Winnipeg. I
The
was
Peg.
moved to Alberta by my parents when I was 5 years old, and I grew up there. I did all my schooling there, and when I was 18, graduated high school, I thought I had the whole world in my pocket, and I decided to move all the way over to the East Coast to go to university at Dalhousie. Definitely a big move. I actually drove across the country in my SUV, packed to the brim with IKEA furniture and
Road
everything I needed.
How was that?
It was a long drive, but it was really nice. I drove down to Winnipeg myself. Not too bad, about 12 hours. I was still young, so the parents didn't want to let me go the whole way by myself. And then my dad flew out and met me, and we did a nice little father-daughter road trip through the States all the way over to the East Coast and into Halifax, and he moved me in. But
That's sweet.
it was a really memorable trip. Then I was in Halifax for 5 years, and about 4 years, and then I moved to Toronto. This summer, it'll be 3 years ago.
3 years ago, wow.
Yes, I have moved 14 times since I left my parents' house in high school.
Wow.
Yeah.
You know that down to the exact number.
Well, when we moved the last time a few weeks ago, I sat down and counted and was like, I am never moving ever again.
On that note, where was that first place you just mentioned?
First place, Okotoks, Alberta, 20 minutes south of Calgary, one of the most beautiful little towns you'll ever see in your whole life.
Lovely. We've had a few guests on from small towns across Canada, and we love that small town charm.
Yeah, no, I would definitely move back if my life were heading that direction.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh, which direction is that?
Okay. So then you're saying this isn't the last stop.
I don't know. I'm always an open book. The train is always ready to leave the station when the time is appropriate, I think. I'm not rooted in one place. I have the beauty of the freedom to go where I want and do what I want, basically. With my family, my parents are actually retired. They live down south, so they don't live anywhere in Canada, so I can kind of go as I please. So yeah, I'm totally open to moving other places wherever life takes me.
Very cool. And I suppose at leaving home at such a young age, you develop that independency, I would imagine.
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing, right? It's always kind of always been me and what I feel like doing. Obviously, there's some very important people in my life who have influenced my movements and my decisions. But yeah, I could say that it's one thing about entrepreneurship for sure is you have to be independent.
You know, it's funny you say, I was literally going to say, is that why you gravitated towards the entrepreneurial lifestyle? So,
Yeah,
there
they
you
go
go.
hand in hand. You definitely cannot be reliant upon other people when you're trying to be a self-starter of a new business.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I want to go back to Dalhousie. What did you take there?
So at Dow, I have, much like my moving history, I have quite an interesting educational history as well. Could never decide what I wanted to do. So when I was in high school, I thought I wanted to be a doctor. I wanted to get into the sciences. So I got accepted into the Bachelor of Science program at Dow and started my first year in that. In my very first 2 months of first semester, I decided I didn't want to do that. And I changed my degree to Bachelor of Arts and thought I wanted to be an English teacher. And then did second semester, I did all the classics. I did Spanish because you had to do a language. I did all this psychology stuff as well. And then I went home for summer break. And after being home for a week, I was like, I hated this year. I don't want to do that. I don't want to be an English teacher. So I switched my program again. I applied for the Bachelor of Commerce in International Business because I had taken my language already. So I figured I'll get my degree in International Business and see where that takes me. And then after starting my business classes in the fall, I was like, no, I don't want to do international business. I think I'm just going to ride it out for a couple years of business classes, decide what I want to do. I switched into accounting, which luckily I didn't lose any credits. Everything kind of flowed together. I just changed my major 5 times. And then finally, in my last year before I graduated, I stopped the accounting classes and focused on the entrepreneurship classes, and I finished in entrepreneurship. But all Bachelor of Commerce.
Yeah, that's quite the history.
Yeah, I could not make up my mind, to say the least. But I think it's important not to be afraid to change your mind and try new things.
Fail fast and fail often. I was saying that to you off podcast here.
Well, it's important to be cognizant of when you're not passionate about something or good at something, instead of riding it out, hoping for the best. Maybe it'll work out if I stick with it. No, the second that it feels wrong in your gut, you have to make a change. It's the only way that you're going to grow.
Absolutely.
I mean, I'm dealing with some of those afterwards things as a result of some of my moves and some of my career changes, but I mean, all of them have shaped me into where I am today and what's going to help me move forward. So I can't say I regret anything by any means.
So Terrena, as you mentioned, you switched your major about 5 times, and during all that, you actually started a very successful business. What year did you start that in?
So in second year university, third year, right after I'd switched to business and was on track with that, I started a company when I was 20 called Terrena Bikinis. Mark knows all about that escapade. We worked together during the first sort of conception of Terrena Bikinis. We worked in a restaurant, and I remember showing him this tiny little bikini one day and feeling like a crazy person, but here we go.
I remember that. I knew you had something because you were networking and you were garnering interest, so you were onto something there.
Well, it was definitely very successful, and Nova Scotia was absolutely the marketplace to launch that. So Terrena Bikinis is a custom competition suit business for bikini competitors in the bodybuilding field. So Nova Scotia, Halifax in particular, has a lot of bikini athletes, and over the last 5 years, it's grown immensely in the number of shows and the number of competitors there are in the city. As I mentioned before, there's people who have influenced decisions that I've made in my life, much like everyone else's life. But I was dating a guy who was a bodybuilder and got to know a lot of his friends who were competitors, and we went and watched a few shows. I thought it was maybe something I wanted to do myself, a competition. And when I looked into doing a competition, of course, the bikini is a huge part of it. And I've always been about the glitter, and I'm a very girly girl. So researching bikinis, I was like, I'll just buy one so that I'll be motivated to work out and fit into this and look good. And I'm just going to spend so much money on it, so I can't give up. I can't quit on the competition. I'm going to do it. And this bikini is going to make me do it. So I was looking online, and the prices were like absolutely outrageous. I was like, I am a student, I cannot afford this. So I was like, you know what, whatever, I'm just gonna make my own. Because my grandmother taught me how to sew when I was a kid, and I've always been super artsy. And I was just like, I'm just gonna figure it out. Like, that's what I'm gonna do. So I watched some YouTube videos on like how to sew. I researched like what fabric is the best for it. I looked at a ton of different companies that sell them and sort of like what they do with their product. And I combed the internet high and low for everything I needed. And I I bought this stuff, so the hardware for it and the stones and everything. And it was like absolute garbage. It was like the worst thing I've ever made in my life. And I'm like, okay, this sucks, but I'm going to make one that doesn't suck. So try again, basically. Didn't give up. I got better with the sewing machine and like using the right stitching and actually like making patterns that fit me rather than just like tracing bikinis onto, like, it was a very hard learning curve because I was doing it the cost efficient way, which was not having someone teach me, right? So learning myself, and I mean, it definitely turned out well for me, but yeah, so that was attempt number 1, 2, 3, and 12 of a bikini for myself. But during that process, I had that light bulb moment where I was like, okay, why am I doing this myself? Let me find someone in Halifax that can make one for me. So I search, and of course there's no one. I'm like, okay, well then that backfired. So I was like, I guess I have no choice but to make myself, because I don't want to order one online. They're too expensive. There's reviews of them falling apart or not fitting properly, and it just wasn't worth it. So back I was to the drawing board. And then once I made like an actual good one that I was super happy with, that looked great, it fit well, I got a little bit better quality hardware for it. I was talking to some friends about it, and they were like, you should do this. There's no one here that does that. And so I kind of just jumped on the opportunity. Like, literally, this whole sort of creative expansion was in the span of like 3 to 4 months, when I actually like made the very first horrible bikini to launching a company. And it just took off from there. And I mean, the timing, the place, the fact that I was the only person in Halifax doing it at that point, like, it all was just like a perfect concoction to have a successful business. And the Canadian Nationals for the bodybuilding bikini competitions for the whole country of that year was in Halifax. And I think that was in 2014. Yeah, 2014. It was in Halifax.
Perfect timing.
Yeah, and it was at the Rebecca Cohen Theatre at Dalhousie, and I was like, what could be better? So I contacted the show organizer. I asked about sponsoring a booth at the show, because it's like sort of like a trade show. Like Popeye Supplements goes and has a table there, and the workout clothing and all that stuff. So here I am, like 4 months into this, and I'm on Vistaprint, like designing logos and branding my business and getting all this stuff ready for this big launch at the show. That was sort of like my grand opening. And I launched, I built my own website, I had like everything rocking and rolling, and it just snowballed from there. Really, it just, by that fall, so that was in April that it launched. By that fall, when the next like round of competitions started to come up, because there's competitions in the spring, there's competitions in the fall, I had like over 50 clients, and I basically had no actual product production backing me up, right? Like, I know we were chatting earlier a little bit about having things that people can view a portfolio of, right, to support your brand and then choose to go with you. I didn't have anything, and people were just coming to me because I was fulfilling a need that wasn't met in the market space, and they were just entrusting me. And I think that all kind of bundled together to propel the business forward, and get better and better and get more and more clients as the years went by. Now, I mean,
what a start. Wow.
Yeah, I would say I lucked out for sure, especially at the time I was still a full-time student. And I always worked another job throughout it as well. So there was nights that I did not sleep leading up to competitions when there was deadlines for suits. Like I had so many orders, but it was really great. But if there was one thing I could do differently, that would be to just have focused on that rather than like having another job. And this kind of ties into where we started the conversation of I almost dropped out of school. So of course, like my first year, I was super cautious. I was like, okay, this is great. I'm making money. Like it's a good side gig, but it's still too soon to tell if this business is going to be successful and scalable and long-term, right?
Yeah.
So then I mentioned I had about 50 clients that fall. So fast forward over the winter, it was February now. And I got an email from our Dalhousie entrepreneurship program saying that there was castings in Halifax in 2 weeks for auditions for Dragon's Den. And that any entrepreneurship students, like they didn't send it directly to me, they sent it to the whole faculty. But that you should go out and just, it's like an open audition. You just go, you pitch your business. If you hear back, you hear back. If you don't, you don't, kind of thing, right? Mm-hmm. So I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to do this. So I filled out the application form online, and they basically just confirmed date and time. And a few weeks passed, and the date rolled along, and it was audition day. And I wake up and I look out my window, and there's like 3 feet of snow. And I'm like, and you know how bad Halifax gets when it snows that much. Like there's no plows. Like the whole city shuts down. Nobody goes to work. Nobody goes to school. Like it's impossible to get anywhere.
We all build forts.
Yeah, and I lived up in Clayton Park, and to basically get anywhere, you have to go downhill. Like so, I'm like, well, my car is gonna slide right on through everything.
Slip and slide, yeah. Yeah,
but I was like, oh, I should just not go. Like, I'm not going to get it anyways. What's the point? Like, it's whatever. And then I was like, no, get it together. Get it together. Like, you were going. And so I got up and I went. And surprisingly, quite a few people showed up for the audition.
How'd you, sort of back you up there, how'd you flip that switch?
I don't know. I think it's just something about me. Like, that's just how I look at everything. Like I always, like I have this natural inhibition to be lazy. I'm not going to lie. Like I could spend the whole day watching Netflix, and oftentimes I do that. But when it comes down to when push comes to shove and I know I want something, that's really what sort of makes or breaks you, whether or not you give in to yourself or force yourself forward. And I think there is sort of like the tipping point of what motivates you and what doesn't motivate you enough. So for example, like if I'm watching Netflix all day, there's probably some stuff that I could be doing to like work towards my business, my book of business, and build things. But like I had a super busy week, so I'm gonna just chill. However, there's the other things that motivate you enough to change what you're doing, which is a potentially life-changing experience, like a Dragon's Den pitch. So it was like, just go, just do it, just rip the Band-Aid off, just stop being a baby, just go.
I love that.
Right? So I went, and keep in mind, I'm like 20 years old still, but terrified, like absolutely terrified. Remember like your first time public speaking in university in front of your class and your heart's going a million miles a minute? I'm pretty sure I had like
a ball of sweat in the middle of my chest.
Yeah, and like I'm pretty sure I just learned how to do an elevator pitch in my business class like 3 weeks before, and here I am doing like the biggest elevator pitch of my life.
Quick learner.
Yeah, it was a little bit scary, I'll tell you that. But
I can imagine. Yeah,
you faced your fears.
You seem to embrace thinking on your feet, though.
Exactly. Yeah. No, and yeah, that's the fear thing too, is how much you let it control you. Like, yeah, everyone's scared. Like, absolutely, I was terrified, but you just kind of make a choice just to do it. And I understand some people struggle with fear, and it can be
it can be a motivator or it can be crippling.
Yeah, crippling.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I think I kind of just shut it off. Like, I feel it, and then I'm like, well, we're already here, so...
You just embrace it.
I think I turned my fear into this persona, and I've done it a few times, particularly in school when you're doing the 2-minute speeches and etc. I turn it into a confident persona, and I just pretend I'm speaking to myself in the privacy of my own home, and there's not all these people staring at me or anything, and I could just block it out. I don't know how, but I can. And I've won like awards in class for like best 2-minute speech and best elevator pitch and all this stuff. And I don't know how, but I can just turn that fear, because I'm still like, I still feel it. Like my fingers shake and my heart beats, but I don't show it. So I don't know what I do. Don't ask me. I can't tell you, but that's all.
You just
We're
get in
going to
the
need to
zone.
hear that 2-minute speech.
That's good. It's just everyone's different, but I think everyone's able to find that zone. I mean, I wasn't joking. It is the zone. We talked about that with sports, but finding that spot where you're just motivated and
Locked in.
firing on all cylinders.
Totally. Adrenaline's pumping. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think, I don't want to call it a skill because it's not something I've developed. It's just something I sort of have, but it's definitely what's propelled me forward as an entrepreneur. I think it's necessary to be able to speak confidently and sort of fly by the seat of your pants sometimes and just be fearless, really. That's what it comes down to.
I mean, none of this would be worth it if it was easy.
Exactly. So true.
There's a lot of emotion at play, and I think that's why oftentimes fear comes into play as well. I'm not obviously an expert in this, but when you care about something as deeply as you do, like, an elevator pitch on Dragon's Den, it's easy to get wrapped up in that emotion and ultimately, confuse it with fear. But really, you just care about it deeply enough that you just don't want to screw up. You don't want to embarrass yourself.
It's
You
your
don't want to
baby.
look bad. It's your baby. It's kind of like us in the podcast. Mm-hmm. You want to make sure you're good at it.
Yeah, it's that tipping point with motivation too. Like when you get to the point of am I going to be too afraid to not do this, or is it like I want to do this so much that I don't care how scared I am?
Right, I'll push through whatever comes in my way.
Yeah, exactly.
Find that zone.
The zone. But yes,
Find that zone. New hashtag, folks. Anyway, so you went to the pitch. You made it.
So, yes, I drove very slowly through 3 feet of snow. Luckily, I had an SUV. I did the pitch, and they're super neutral. Like, they can't really react to how well you did or didn't do. They ask you questions, and they want to learn more about the business as to make their decision. But then they basically just say, okay, great, thank you, and they send you on your way. And then on the way out, the receptionist is like, they'll call you or they won't call you. Give it a few weeks.
So you really have no idea.
I had no idea. Not a clue. I mean, my pitch was, my time with them was pretty extensive. I was in there for a while explaining everything to them because it's a unique industry. People haven't heard about it. They don't know about it. They can't fill in the blanks. You have to fill in the blanks for them, right? So people had a lot of questions.
It's not a traditional industry for sure.
Yes, exactly. But, so yes, I left not knowing how I did.
I saw that episode, by the way.
You saw the episode?
I did.
Yeah? When it aired?
I think so, actually. Yeah. I remember it was going around Dow, too. There was a student among us that was going to make it big.
Ooh, exciting. I was actually living in Toronto already when it aired. I wish I was back in Halifax.
Yeah, I remember asking you about it, and you're like, I can't say anything till it airs.
Yes, I wasn't allowed. I mean, I definitely told a few people, but I wasn't allowed. Okay, so yes, fast forward from February to March, and this is definitely not one of the moments that I'm proud of, but it was probably the most exhilarating moments of my life. So, it was St. Patrick's Day, and we all know St. Patrick's Day on the East Coast in university is a little wild time.
It can get pretty crazy.
Pretty crazy. And I was, of course, still young. I was at a house party, like many of my friends were at said house party, and my phone rings. And it was a 416 number. And I'm like, Toronto? Okay, weird. I didn't know anybody in Toronto at this point. Like, hadn't been there, like, nothing. Knew no one. So I'm like, weird. And I answer the phone. And he tells me, like, he asks, are you Terrena? And tells me that we loved your pitch. We want you to come to Toronto to film a live pitch in front of the Dragons. And I freaked out, obviously. Well, I was calm, cool, and collected on the phone, so I'd like to think. My voice was probably shaking, but I was like, oh my God, thank you. And I get off the phone, and I just start screaming because I'm so excited. And everyone's like turns around and looks at me in this party, and they're like, what's wrong with this girl? And I felt kind of dumb because I was drawing so much attention to myself, but I was just so excited. I was like, I'm going to be a Dragon. And then, yes, the rest of the day was not only a celebration for Mr. St. Patrick, but also for myself, and it was pretty fun. And then, of course, I'm still in class, still in school, but also prepping for this huge audition, planning to fly out to Toronto, getting models to be on stage with me, planning my pitch, getting, like, suits ready, making, like, the most beautiful ones that I could possibly make with my two hands to show these dragons. And, of course, like, I had to actually fly to Toronto to pitch in April between final exams. I, like,
oh, really?
Perfectly had, like, the day that they needed me there, I had, like, 3 days between exams. Like, it could not have been a better window, because I'm sure a teacher would have not let me reschedule my exam, because they're accommodating, but they're not accommodating. But, anyways, yes. So, studying for exams, studying for my pitch, went to Toronto, did my pitch. It was absolutely terrifying. Like, it's one thing to go into, like, a conference room and pitch to them on a snowy day as they're just sitting there with their computers, not the actual dragons, the, like, CBC producers,
right.
Versus going into, like, a filming room with bright lights on you, and, like, it's all live, and you can't sort of, like, pause and be like, oh, no, I take that back, or whatever. Yeah, it was definitely nerve-wracking.
Yeah, that's very intimidating.
But it was great. I actually was in there for the longest out of any pitch on that season. I was in there for like over an hour with them asking me questions about it and just explaining it all to them. Of course, they edited it down.
Getting grilled.
Yeah, they seriously. But it was about 7 minutes by the time they edited it down and it aired. My part was about 7 minutes. But, yeah, they had a lot of great feedback for me, obviously, as a young entrepreneur, a lot of advice, commending me for pursuing it while still being a student. And I did get offered a deal by Mike Weckerly. At first, this is actually quite funny. I made a joke, but one of the dragons was talking while I made a joke, so she actually, like, whipped her head around because she caught a bit of it and thought it was funny, and she was like, say that again. And I was like, what? But Mike Weckerly was saying, so, like, why would somebody buy this just to wear it one time? That makes no sense to me. No one's going to spend that much money to buy something just for one use. Like, they would have to be able to wear it to the beach or for another thing. And I was like, well, Mike, like, you only wear soccer cleats for soccer. Why would you wear this for something else? And that's what that was like. They didn't air that, but yeah, she made me repeat that because I was, being a little sassy, but he ended up offering me a deal. So
there you go. You give it back.
Yeah, no shame.
That's awesome.
But yeah, and then moving forward from there, I kept doing it throughout the rest of my degree, which I think at that point was another 1.5 years left. And then I continued on with that until basically I kind of only dwindled off of it about 6 months ago. Started focusing on other things, and they actually canceled several of the shows on the East Coast that were annual shows that I had a lot of clients for. So in terms of like business sustainability, I didn't really realize how much my business depended on these shows operating each year until they were canceled and nobody was competing, and I never thought that they would ever be canceled, right? It's not just something that crosses, like, you don't consider it a risk because usually when it's annual, but it only lasted about 3 or 4 years. So I rode the wave, and then the wave stopped, and I got off the wave, and here we are now.
Oh, there you go. What were any of the things that they told you, any of the advice that still sticks with you today?
Gosh, well, as much as I would love to remember it, I kind of have this horrible thing with long-term memory where I block things out. So particularly because I was scared, I don't really remember a lot. But I remember Jim, the Boston Pizza guy, he just told me basically, like, it's so great that you took the risk to do this, and you're this young and you're here. And the one thing I can say to student entrepreneurs is that there is no better time to be an entrepreneur than when you're a student and you have boundless resources and countless support, and you literally have nothing to lose, because if the business fails, you most likely haven't significantly invested a lot of capital in it, and you basically have nothing to lose. So that was his sort of his praise to me, but also his piece of advice to people watching was, especially students, like, if you want to try something, the time to try it is in university when you're young. And to move forward on that piece, I am so glad that I did, and I learned, and I took the leap, and I tried my own business out when I was young, because now that I'm older and I'm getting into an entrepreneurial career again, I've learned so much from that sort of trial run, I like to think of it as, and how I want to run my business going forward now that I am a mortgage agent. So
there you go. One thing that's interesting and important about doing that kind of thing while you're still a student, getting involved with entrepreneurship, is you always hear that I get out of university and these jobs, these places, they want 5 years of experience. How could I have any experience? Well, entrepreneurship during university, there's your experience.
Yeah, that's so true. I mean, yeah, no one's gonna. That's so funny, because I've actually been turned down for so many jobs that I've applied for since university, because of relevant experience. But you know what? I'm glad I didn't get any of those jobs, because I wouldn't be able to have this second chance of running another business where I am now. And but yeah, absolutely. Like, if even a landscaping company, I remember one guy I was in school with, he wanted to do his co-op hosting barbecues at people's homes up in Muskoka in Ontario, and just like bringing all the food and everything, and just
That's
using
hilarious.
their barbecue and cooking for them.
Just hosting parties at people's houses. Why not?
Right? At people's cottages. But I mean, I remember sitting in the entrepreneurship office at Dal, waiting to do my pitch to the board to get approved to do an entrepreneurial co-op. And he was in there pitching before me, and I was listening, and I remember being like, they're definitely not going to approve him for that. He's basically just gets to do a co-op for the summer, partying in Muskoka. And I actually never found out if he got approved or not, but if he did, good for him. But okay, yes, that actually brings me back, the co-op thing. So defining moment, like 110% was my very first co-op. I got a co-op with a commercial real estate valuation firm downtown Halifax, and I was a junior analyst, as they so call it, but basically a glorified secretary of types. Anyways, I had to proofread documents and do market research and work on spreadsheets and work in an office Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. And I absolutely hated it. And it was the same semester that I had the idea for Terena's Bikinis, and it all sort of came together. I used to work on it on my lunch breaks and everything, and researching stuff. But I was like, I never want to work in an office. I always want to work for myself. So that was a defining moment when I was like 20 years old, that I knew that this type of career was not for me. Admittedly, I have gone back to a desk job since, but that was more so for stability of income while I was finishing up school and sort of getting on my feet now with the mortgage thing. It's nice. It's cushy. It's hard to leave. But yes, that was a little side note of my defining moment of when I knew that the 9 to 5 was not for me.
That's good. It's so important to recognize that and be okay with that.
Mm-hmm. Totally. Well, I'm lucky. My dad is like a serial entrepreneur, and I'm a chip off the old block. So I've always felt supported by him in my endeavors. He did discourage me from going to art school, but he, as I mentioned, good old shout out to Bert, encouraged me heavily to finish university and not to drop out and do bikinis. And I am glad in retrospect that I did that, because like I mentioned, the shows have been canceled. Who knows what would have happened now. But But yeah.
It's great to have that safety net. We've talked about that before.
Definitely.
What you were saying earlier is you've transitioned into the mortgage brokerage industry because it's going to give you more of an opportunity to settle down and things like that. You're at that point in life. And we've seen that theme where you're entering maybe more of a traditional area, but now it's the right time, as opposed to 6 or 7 years ago, you wanted to do a few other things. If you started this 6 or 7 years ago, maybe you wouldn't have been happy.
Yeah, I definitely...
Obviously not for you, you're 24, but for someone a bit older.
So there's two sides to that coin. Yes, it's definitely a more traditional industry, and it takes a bit more life experience and knowing people to get into something like this. If you want to be a mortgage agent straight out of high school, I've definitely heard of some success stories, not saying you can't do it, just saying, yeah, you should take that time while you're young to explore other opportunities, sort of learn what you like, what you don't like, what your strengths are, if you're a people person, if you're not a people person. I find people have this tendency to say they are what they want to be. So like I would love to be a people person, and I am to some extent. Like, I'm going to be working directly with people every single day with mortgages, and as having been a server in the past, I can talk to absolutely anybody, but I like my quiet time. I like to be alone. I like to do my own thing. So as much as I want to be a people person, I don't think that other people would call me a people person. So it's one of those things where people often say they are what they want to be. So it's important to sort of dip your toes in everything when you're young to actually find out what you are good at instead of what you just want to be good at.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes. Okay. And then so the other side of that coin is if I were not only 24 years old, and if, say, I were 30 years old, I do wish I would have gotten into the industry 6 or 7 years ago because it was really, really hot. Now it's cooled off quite a bit. But that being said, if you want to get all technical, mortgage brokers should be having a lot of success in the upcoming years, based on the fact that the banks are tightening their lending reins so much. But I don't want to bore anybody here with any mortgage statistics, so we'll just stick to the career side of it.
Things are looking up.
Yeah, things are looking great.
For brokers particularly, yes, they're looking great. For people buying homes as well, it's a little tougher, so it's hard to be optimistic about getting a mortgage, but that's why you go to a broker rather than a bank, right? Your chances of approval are like 10 to 1. But
I'd love to hear how you made that transition from kind of the serial entrepreneurship with Terrena's Bikinis to where you are now in Barrie with the mortgage career going.
Yes, totally. Okay, so as I mentioned, I had a desk job, and I knew it wasn't going to be what I wanted to do forever. It wasn't fulfilling. I didn't see any challenging opportunities for me to solve problems and to grow and etc. Common story, right? But my cousin is actually a mortgage agent out in Manitoba. She started in the springtime, and a lot of my family are realtors, real estate agents, and I've always wanted to get my feet wet in the real estate industry, whether it eventually lead to being developments or design, like interior design, or even selling homes. That's the direction I've always been really interested in. Like, HGTV is my Sunday morning ritual for the gods. Like,
there's that art school coming into play.
Yes. So I decided I wanted to start doing something that I actually like enjoyed, right? So rather than real estate, getting my real estate license here, I thought I would take the stepping stone to mortgages. Financially, it's not as big of an upfront investment as a real estate course is, and time as well. It takes a lot less time to get licensed as a mortgage agent versus a real estate agent. So I was like, this is a perfect stepping stone. My cousin told me all about it. I'm going to get licensed. I'm going to learn as much as I can, take it all in, and it'll just benefit me even more when I eventually do become a real estate agent, which is my be-all, end-all goal for career-wise. I think I want to be a real estate agent, but as I learn more every day about the mortgage industry, that changes. And I'm like I said in the beginning, I'm always open to changing no matter what. Every single day is different. It takes me a different direction. So yes, so that's sort of how that came about. I took my course on it and I wrote my tests and I got licensed in October. I signed with a brokerage. So you can't operate on your own legally as an agent. You have to be licensed through a brokerage. And then after 2 years, you can change your license to be a broker versus an agent. And then you can operate on your own. But to start off, you have to be with a brokerage. So I'm with Citadel Mortgages.
You're not Terena's Bikinis?
No, my gosh, that is good. It's great because working for a brokerage, well, you're 100% commission, so essentially you're working for yourself, but you pay a monthly desk fee and you have access to all of these resources, the rest of your team, support from your principal broker. You're not going in on it like totally clueless, totally alone, not knowing how to do anything. So I find it's the perfect amount of entrepreneurial and structured environment that sort of combines the two, that I feel empowered that I can be successful in this role. So that was really appealing to me. In terms of entrepreneurship, I'm much more of a brick and mortar entrepreneur than I am like a digital entrepreneur. I have no clue like what drop shipping is or how to sell like an ebook or an online course or all these things that are making people hundreds of thousands of dollars. I'm like, I can sell a pencil to a school teacher. Like, I understand that. So
there's digital marketing. It's kind of crazy.
It's a realm I definitely
Native
don't
advertising,
understand.
all that stuff.
Like, I understand physical business rather than online business. So that's why mortgages is a good fit for myself. And then, of course, building relationships with people. I mentioned I don't think of myself as a people person as much as I would like to, but this is one of those things that's going to push me outside of my comfort zone, and just make and maintain new relationships. I have no problem walking into like a real estate office and being like, hey, I'm Terrena, just want to introduce myself. I'm new to the town. Just want to let you know I'm here. If you have any clients that have trouble with approval, just give me a call. I can help you out. Let me see what I can do. Just wanted to say hello. Like, I have no problem walking in anywhere and just pitching myself like that. But to actually like I don't want to say be friendly, because I am very friendly, but to be on a level other than like a professional relationship, I feel like I struggle with that. So
It doesn't come as naturally.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Like, does that make any sense? Am I speaking?
It does.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. It's like as you talk, you sort of say things out loud that your brain has thought, but you've never spoken before, and then when you say it out loud, you're like, I sound really dumb. But
That's the most fun part about podcasting.
Hey, it's good to get that out there, though.
It's
and you don't sound
amazing
dumb.
to hear yourself as you think.
Yeah, what's great that you were talking about with the mortgage career is that you still keep your autonomy, but you've got all this support from the business itself.
And now, one thing I mentioned earlier about Bikinis sort of being a trial run for me for this business, and what I've learned that I've brought into this business is the number one thing that's sort of sticking with me every single day that I come back to is you can't expect full-time results from part-time effort.
Where did you get that?
Well, I listen to a lot of audiobooks for brokering, and that's kind of the common theme is if you want to be a successful broker, like, guess what? You got to quit your job. You can't do this in the evenings between 7 and 9 p.m. So I'm actually quitting my full-time job that I have in the office come end of January, but I've spent these last few months between getting licensed in October until the end of January learning as much as I can. My brokerage gives me modules. I've been to networking events. I've been reaching out to realtors in the community, basically just getting myself prepared to take that leap of going 100% full-time and hopefully getting some clients to support me along the way, right? So I didn't just quit. Yeah, that's the goal. And I didn't just quit cold turkey. I've been preparing for several months with, January being the time in my mind that I'm making this transition. And so I've been, saving some money because it's going to be a couple of dry months to get started. But that's one thing that I learned from Bikinis was I was always doing it part-time, and I was seeing results. I did well, but I know I could have done so much better if that was the only thing I focused on. Like, I did that, I was in school, I was serving, like, I was in a relationship, like, there was, how many different things can you focus on before one of those things starts to suffer, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that was one thing I learned from Bikinis, is that you have to do it full time in order to be successful. So I know that quitting my job is going to be scary, but it's something I need to do because I want to grow in this industry. And then one of the other things as well is around consistent marketing. So not just like pushing posts for like 2 weeks straight, being super motivated about it, and then dropping off the face of the earth. Like, it's all about consistency and staying top of mind and frequently posting, but not too frequently, but frequently enough that like every couple days someone sees something. And
you got to stay relevant.
Yeah,
find
stay
that happy
relevant.
balance.
And it's always been said, in the mortgage industry in particular, your social media is not going to convert into leads for you. It's just not. Your friends aren't going to reach out to you for mortgages because it's personal information. You're dealing with credit scores and income, and your friends don't want to tell you that. But what it's going to do is keep you top of mind for your friends to refer their friends to you. So
Right, exactly.
that's sort of how that works. It's just about being the source of information and being an educational sort of pinpoint for your friends to gravitate towards, right? And it really is a long-term game. Like, mortgages is absolutely not for someone who is an instant gratification kind of person, who doesn't have the patience to sort of stick it out to the end. 1 in 4 brokers quit within their first year because they just don't make it. And the majority of that is because they haven't quit their jobs and they're still doing it part-time, and then they kind of just drop off because they're not seeing results from it. And, well, why aren't they seeing results? Because they're putting in part-time effort, right? So
there you go.
Got to put in that full-time effort.
Mm-hmm.
You
Exactly.
got to dive in like you're doing this January.
Yeah, and I'm so excited. So you kind of saw earlier when we had the FaceTime up, I have this glass wall behind me in my apartment, and it's basically like my giant whiteboard, although it's glass. But and I have whiteboard markers, and it's just like packed full of ideas and people I want to meet and conferences I want to go to and events I want to like go to in the city and upcoming things and names of realtors and like
That's
it's
so
just,
cool.
Yeah, it's just like my
That is really cool.
generation board. And one of the most frustrating things for me right now is that I have all of these ideas, but I don't have any time to act on them because I'm still working like 40, 50 hours a week. But which is why I'm so pumped for January, because I feel like I'm not going to be flying blind once I quit. I've got a sense of direction. I have a plan. I have goals that I want to achieve, people I want to meet, things I want to focus on. So it really is going to get me there, and I'm really excited.
Have you always had this drive?
Yeah, I would definitely say it's something that I've had since I was a kid. My dad has always called me stubborn. I have always had an entrepreneurial spirit. I used to sell drawings of horses when I was in elementary school to my friends for $1.
No way. That's great.
But they wanted them, so it's not like
I'm sure they weren't.
I wasn't
Don't
hustling
get
them.
defensive. That's okay. That's okay.
My Little
This is
Pony
this is a
drawings.
self-starter podcast, so
Right?
you're all right. You're all right to collect a loonie from your friends.
Well, yeah, I mean, basically highway robbery allowances back then weren't that big, but whatever.
Sure, you had to knock a tooth out. to
Hence
get
the
money.
glamorous lifestyle.
Yeah, exactly. You got to be smart with your money. Come on. But yeah, no, I've always had this drive. I've always been entrepreneurial. I don't take no for an answer. It's the best and the worst thing about me at times. The stubbornness, but at the same time, not giving up. So it's kind of a give and take at times. I've learned a lot about myself over the last few years, particularly in my most recent relationship. I've never really had people challenge me until I've been with my current boyfriend, and he challenges me on my stubbornness and my like inability to compromise, and he's really helped me grow and be more accommodating to other people. But
I don't know what you're talking about. You were great when I worked with you. No, I'm just kidding. Well, that's good. And we've talked about that before. Is it's so important to surround yourself with people that are going to challenge you to get better all the time.
Yeah, I think I've always been this way. It's just I've always been pushed to work for everything I wanted. I've had a job since I was 14, like never not had a job. I've always had to work for basically anything. I remember I had to pay for my own high school graduation dress. Like it's but
No way.
yeah, but once I'm the kind of person that once I get something in my mind that I want, like I figure out any way possible to get it. So that's just
It's a great attitude to have.
how I operate, man.
And now, is it a sense of pride or just an innate kind of skill you have?
No, I mean, I don't think about it. So it's not something that I do intentionally. It's just like my reactive state.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
I do, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm curious. Big year coming up for you, Terrena.
Mm-hmm.
What are some of the fears you have going into this without getting you too freaked out? I don't want you to have to bring up everything all at once.
No, I mean, well, there's the obvious fear with literally anything of failure. I could quit my job and hit the pavement every single day, knocking on doors, going to meetings, meeting people, and nothing could convert. Nobody could need a mortgage or want a mortgage from me. Everyone has their banker or their broker that they've been using for X amount of years, right? That's always a possibility that I don't generate any business for myself. I mean, that's a risk with literally everything, right? But other than that, fears, there's not really any. Like, I know that...
You're quite prepared.
Pardon me?
You're quite prepared.
I'm prepared, yes, and I think
Your vision is clear.
Yes, and I'm just the perfect amount of overconfident to still be naive enough to ignore the fear of failure while like not being too naive that I'm just sitting back on my couch saying, "Oh, the business will come, right? Like I know I have to go out and work for it, and I kind of also know that if I am working that hard for it, that failure is not really an option.
Yeah. So that's kind of cool. Like we said, you're prepared. You have a clear vision. I think that's so important going into this when you are quitting your job to really focus on what was once a side hustle is now going to become your main source of income.
Mm-hmm.
That's, yeah.
Yeah, I'm really excited. I think that's what true entrepreneurship is, being able to take that risk. I think before with Bikinis, I played it safe, like 100%. I always had another source of income. I stayed in school. I didn't take the real risk that I needed to either make it or not. But that's, like I said, one thing that I am taking forward from that is that you have to take that risk. Like, I'm at the point in my life where I'm no longer a university kid. I'm ready for a career, and I want to make something of myself, and so I know what I need to do. And basically, once I've quit my job, like I don't have a choice. I have to be successful. I have to pay my bills. I have to make money every month, and the only way I'm going to do that is by working hard. So it's a risk, but I'm going to do everything I need to do.
I would say you're very sure of yourself. You're just very set.
Mm-hmm.
Have you always been that way?
Optimistic, I've been a realist, but never a pessimist, right? And like I mentioned, there's always the little bit of naivete that you have to sort of ignore the fears and ignore people's comments about, oh, what if this doesn't work? What if that doesn't work? But at the same time, you can't be too naive, or else you're not going to do the things that you need to do to be successful, right? So that's where the realism comes in. Of like, I'm hopeful and I'm optimistic, but I know it's going to take hard work, and that failure is a possibility.
Exactly. That's one of the, like, put out that confidence into the world, but on the inside, you're realistic. You know what's up. You know what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
I find it so interesting that some people are able to pick up on that. Not to say that you're young in any sense of the word, but 24, you've got that part figured out.
Yeah, a lot of self-reflection. I've been lucky enough to have a lot of learnings since I started a business so early. I would definitely say I'm ahead of some of those who are starting now, and that's because I'm in the been there, done that stage, and I really do believe in trial and error, and I've learned a lot of things that I've taken to heart and moved forward with due to trial and error. So I'm never going to make the same mistake twice. I can promise you that.
That's great.
You learn from your past failures. It's exactly what I said to you as soon as we started talking.
Mm-hmm.
Fail fast and fail often.
Mm-hmm. Totally.
And you have taken that and you're like, why, if I can do something better, why wouldn't I do that?
Exactly. Yeah, that's kind of what it comes down to is, I mean, for me, it's just reason. Like, this makes sense, so why wouldn't I do that? This doesn't make sense, why would I do that? But at the same time, it is listening to the experts, being a sponge. Like, I am by no means, like, your go-to person for mortgages. I still have so much to learn, but that's the difference.
But that's where we're headed in 5 years.
Yeah, the follow-up.
The Empire. You're going to have the tallest building in Toronto.
Oh, gosh.
You'll have to come back on. You'll have to come back on the podcast.
Yeah, well,
whenever you
I was
hit
going
it
to say
big.
that since you're kind of getting started now. We're definitely going to want to follow up.
Even
You're
like
quite the
1 year
enigma.
follow-up.
You're an artsy girl from the country,
But very business oriented.
but very business oriented and glamorous. I'm just like, what?
Yeah, and glamorous.
I don't get it. How did you walk out that way?
I don't know, man. Cut from some crazy cloth.
I don't know,
Woke up
man.
like this.
Oh, that's hilarious. Sorry to pick on you.
That's
No,
great.
my gosh, no. I mean, yeah, I definitely.
You're an enigma of sorts.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Like I'm often, my story is often a shocker to many people, but I mean, that's what, like, all these life experiences has what's led me to making these decisions that I'm making present day, and really knowing what's best for myself and how I operate and what I want out of life. And I think that kind of all has molded me into an entrepreneur of sorts.
No
Yeah.
question. I think starting.
Yeah,
like
I think
you
you've
said-
been an entrepreneur since day one.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know if there was much molding involved. I mean, you were sniping toonies from your homies.
But yeah, no, it's been great being on with you guys. You've actually taught me things about myself that I've never spoken out loud before, and I always love those little self-reflection moments. It's important to have that and sort of bounce ideas off each other. So thank you for having me. I very much appreciate the offer.
Of course, well,
This is a first for us. We've never had a guest wrap it up.
we
for
love
us.
this.
That is amazing.
Take it away, Terrena.
Yeah,
When are
you and
gonna
I
host
are.
season 2.
Mark and I are on the other end here. That's
It's
hilarious.
fantastic, but that's
Wow.
the thing. You see an opportunity and you take control and do your thing. It's awesome. It's entrepreneurial way.
Entrepreneurial Terrena.
Yeah,
Okay,
I hope you
well,
don't mind it. It is
No.
my bedtime.
It's time to let Terrena go. As I'm sure we all know at this point, incredibly busy. Getting up at, what did you say, 4:30?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So we're gonna let her hit the hay and
Thanks.
recharge. Really appreciate you taking the time. I know that we kind of rushed you into this slot, so thank you so much.
Of course.
Yeah.
It was
Can't
a
thank you
blast.
enough.
Be happy for the follow-up episode in a year's time. See how much this actually came to play.
Absolutely. We have all the confidence in the world in you.
Well, thank you very much.
Okay, well, I'm gonna end it there. Ben, anything else you wanted to add?
thank you again. I think our guests are obviously our most important aspect of this. It doesn't matter what Mark and I do, really. It's about your story. And thank you very much for opening up, sharing it, being an excellent guest, even hosting at some point. So thank you very much for being you. And we honestly feel so very fortunate to have the guests that we do. Without you folks, we're not here where we are. So thank you, thank you,
Without
thank you.
you, we're nowhere.
Well, thank you guys. Happy to help.
And I'm gonna end it there. For Brand New View, I'm Mark Boudreau.
And I am Ben Brammer.
Until next week.
Cheers. See you, Terrena.
With the same old blue. I was the same old